Hi guys and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be looking into the true crime case which is actually being reinvestigated, and it is that of Alonzo Brooks. They're looking into reopening this case due to public interest surrounding the series. I just wanted to let you know that all this information has been collated from the internet. I mean, no disrespect to anyone that I may speak about today, and this is just for educational purposes. Alonzo was 23 years old and he was working as a custodian for countryside maintenance in Gardner. His mother is called Maria Ramirez and his father is called Billy. He also had 3 sisters and 1 brother. Alonzo was actually the youngest of the family, and it's said that he always wanted to do things that his older brothers and sisters were doing, but often he couldn't because he wasn't old enough. He was always really polite and responsible, and he was really close with his mother. He also really took pride in his appearance. He always liked to look smart. He was often seen in red clothing because this was actually his favourite colour, so he liked to wear it a lot. And he also loved to play football. Alonzo was mainly known to everyone by his nickname Zoe. Now, his big brother Billy Jr. has actually said that he always tried to teach Alonzo about the outside world, how cruel it can be sometimes, just because he wanted him to be aware and not go into it without a backup plan in a sense. But with him being so young, Maria always tried to keep him away from that, and she tried to protect him basically. So she didn't really want Billy doing things like that because she didn't want Alonzo to grow up too quickly, which is completely understandable. Unfortunately, that's exactly what it seems like happened on the 4th of April 2004. On the 3rd of April 2004, Alonzo and 3 of his friends, Justin Sprague, Daniel Fune and Tyler Brookhard, all went to a party in Lacey. Now, Lacey is a really small town. There's not that much to do in the town basically. There's not much around. It's generally just countryside, and it was about 50 miles away from where Alonzo lived. This would take him about 1 hour to drive there. The friends began to discuss who was going with who and in which car, when Alonzo asked Justin if he had anyone in the car with him, and he said no. So Alonzo asked if he could ride with Justin, to which he said yes. When they arrived at the party, there was a couple of people scattered outside, and Alonzo's first interaction with them was, "Who wants a beer?" This is how he kind of broke the ice with them. Once inside, they began doing what you do in a party, drinking, socialising. They even partook in drinking games. And Alonzo was seen also partaking in these games. He was generally having a really good time. Alonzo only knew a few people at this party. The vast majority, I think there was around 40 to 50 people there, he didn't actually know. But this didn't stop him from joining in on all the fun. A little later on, his friend Daniel actually saw Alonzo getting into a bit of an argument with another person. So, fearing that it could escalate, Daniel went over and basically split it up. There was also comments of racial slurs going around the party at the time. With Alonzo's ethnicity being in the minority at this party, it was primarily white, so it was generally aimed towards him basically. Daniel, and not long after Tyler, left the party after around an hour. They heard that there was going to be another party and they wanted to attend this one, so they said their goodbyes to Alonzo and they left him there with Justin. At this point, Alonzo was still really enjoying himself, and to say that he was normally quite a timid person, he was acting really outgoing and just throwing himself out there, and he was just generally having a blast. So from what I could find, there were still some people at the party that he knew, but there were not many left. Like I said, he came to the party with Justin, so you would presume that Justin would be taking him home, which is what the plan was. Now, this all changed when Justin asked Alonzo if he had a cigarette. Alonzo had run out, and so had Justin, so Alonzo told him that if he was going to go to the shop to get some cigarettes, that he should get him some too. So away Justin went, but when he set off, he actually took a wrong turn. He got his car stuck, and he ended up about half an hour away from the party, lost and stuck. In the end, he rang one of his friends, Adam I believe, to let Alonzo know that he wasn't going to be back for him because he was stuck, and that he asked Adam to be Alonzo's ride home basically. He also noted that he could hear Alonzo in the background taking the mick out of him for getting stuck. So again, he was still having a good time. And the next day, Maria, his mother, received a phone call to check whether Alonzo got home safe. So she said, obviously, well, he should have done. She went to check his room, but his bed hadn't been slept in. And Alonzo didn't come home that night. This wasn't like Alonzo at all. His mother has said he always came home. Obviously, Justin thought Adam was supposed to take him home, so he contacted him, and it turns out that Alonzo and Adam missed each other by the end of the party, and Adam thought he'd already gone home, he'd got to live with someone else. So poor Alonzo was left alone at a party, miles away from his house with no ride home. Alonzo's best friend was called Rodney English. And after hearing the news of Alonzo's being missing, he decided that he would drive down straight away to go and look for him. What if he was drunk and had fallen asleep somewhere? What if he was injured and needed his help? He had to just go and help look for him. When Rodney got to the place where the party was, he actually walked around to look for him. He ended up walking down the main road and he found one of his boots and his hat on one side of the road, and a little bit further down he found his other boot on the other side of the road. Now this was very strange. A couple of days before, he'd actually injured his foot at football, his ankle, so he was limping around, and he was still limping when he went to this party. So why were his shoes on the side of the road? It was very strange. Surely an injured ankle without a shoe would cause him more pain, because it wouldn't have been supported. Maria went to the police station to report him missing, to which they told her, it's got to be 48 hours before you even let us know that he's missing. She told them that I know my son. He hasn't come home. He always comes home. He is missing. Something is wrong. She phoned her children, family and friends to look for Alonzo, who looked around the property, and they found that the house was a rented property that was currently empty and not being rented to anyone. After the allotted time, he was reported missing, and the Lynn County Sheriff walked around the area, walked around the house, but didn't find anyone, didn't find Alonzo, so he came back and reported no contact. The case was then passed over to the Kansas Bureau of Investigations, or the KBI as I will refer to them in this video. They looked into the case, they commenced a search of the area, and the FBI got involved, and they were kind of investigating as to whether this was a hate crime, because like I said, the racial slurs that were around the party at the time. There was a creek around the area, and this got searched on the 12th of April. There was a search team and a dive team brought in, and they perilously searched around this area, around the creek, but they actually found nothing. Robert, which was, like I said before, Alonzo's best friend, actually asked his friends why they all left him alone at a party miles away from his house. And his friends didn't really have an answer for this. His mother was also really angry at his friends for this, because like I said, he is now missing. I think that maybe his friends each thought that there was somebody left there that could take Alonzo home, but in my eyes they should have made sure that he got home safely. The police conducted hundreds of interviews and polygraph tests. However, they didn't actually interview everyone at the party because some people lawyered up straight away, which meant that they didn't actually have to take a polygraph test. Now, in my eyes, if you're not hiding anything, why would you lawyer up? Why would you not just take the test? Because it would have been to do with Alonzo. So what were they actually hiding? The police suggested that maybe Alonzo had taken off his shoes whilst drunk and tried to walk home, basically. But this was kind of refuted in the sense that they told him that he had an injured ankle, like I said, and he was still limping from it. He could have taken off his shoes being drunk. I'm not saying that that's not possible, but it's just quite unlikely in this case. The police did find that there were multiple fights at this party, and a family member of Alonzo's did hear that he may have been dancing with a girl and maybe somebody didn't like it. And this has led people to believe that Alonzo was possibly jumped by numerous people and maybe killed in relation to this. However, for the next month, police continued to look into this case but found no new information, no new leads. His family did want to conduct their own search, and they constantly rang the police asking for updates and news, things like that, to which the police basically told them they need to stop ringing, we'll let you know. It was a full 27 days after Alonzo went missing when his family finally got the okay to conduct their own search. So on the 1st of May 2004, his family, friends, volunteers all got together in a group to conduct a search. Maria did not attend the search, but her brother did. They searched the creek, the surrounding areas, and after a little while they noticed a white shed, so the group decided to go over to the shed to investigate that. When they approached it, they actually found Alonzo's body on the bank of Middle Creek. Alonzo's uncle radioed Billy Jr. and said, "We found him," so Billy ran as fast as he could to where his uncle was. He ended up running down the banking, to which his uncle said, "No, stop, don't touch his body. We don't want to contaminate any evidence." They obviously called the police. The KBI, the FBI all descended on the scene. And they later stated that they had been around this area on many occasions, with cadaver dogs, search teams, etc. And that if his body was there at the time, they would have found it. Police took Alonzo's body in for an autopsy, and the tissue around his throat had basically just gone. So, could he have possibly been strangled? Could he have drowned? With this missing, they just did not know. The animals and the bugs around the creek would have obviously damaged this area, and there was just no way of knowing whether this was his cause of death. They did determine that Alonzo had not suffered any blunt force trauma, there was no broken bones, and on looking at his clothes there was no sign of any penetration, which means that he wasn't stabbed or shot, but Alonzo's cause of death was not determined. They did also find a few personal items on Alonzo, including his wallet, which wasn't damaged, and the money was all still inside, which leads me to believe that obviously robbery wasn't a motive in this crime. So obviously the media picked up this case, and all sorts of things started going around as to what actually happened to Alonzo. And who knows, some of this might have even been true. I actually read one comment that actually stated, "We all know whose freezer he's been kept in." Another confusing fact was, like I said, the police had cadaver dogs. They had numerous tools at their disposal for searching around the creek and the area, but his body wasn't found. Why was he not found if he was there the whole time? His body wasn't at all bloated, which indicates that he didn't spend too much time in any water. And like I said, his belongings, like the money, he had a piece of paper in his pocket that was still completely intact. His bandana was pretty much undamaged. None of it really makes sense. If, say, the current had collected his body and taken him downstream to where he then, I don't know, got caught on some bushes or some weeds and his body ended up on the banking, at the very least, the paper in his pocket would have turned to mush. You put paper in water and it just starts disintegrating. Because of this, it made people believe that once the search was called off by the police, that potentially his body was then dumped there at a later date. Either not knowing that his family would come and search for him, or knowing that they would and wanting them to find his body. Also, due to the slow decomposition of Alonzo's body, it made people speculate that he was stored in a freezer, whilst the police conducted the search and then dumped at a later date. Even his brother, Billy Jr., stated that he still had all of his colour. He looked as if he was still alive in a sense. I really do think these main points are very strange with this case. Like his boots, for example. He always wore these boots. He found them very comfortable. Now I do know under the influence a lot of things happen and people do strange things. But why would he take them off with an injured ankle and walk around barefoot? Also, like I said before, the police having all those tools at their disposal, not actually finding his body. Yet the family look for 30 minutes and find him straight away. This really does make me think that he was killed and, I don't know, maybe stored in a freezer and then placed at that site later. Or maybe even that he was kept alive and he was killed just before his body was dumped and they found him. Now that's just my opinion as to what I think happened. Obviously Alonzo was drunk. He could have wandered off. He could have injured himself and lost his life at the creek. It could have all been an accident, but personally I believe that he was a victim of a crime. In March 2019, the KBI sent his family a letter which closed the case. This was due to them finding no information that Alonzo's death was related to a crime. And this means that with all the interviews and the polygraph tests that they carried out, they actually found nothing. That was all until a series aired which covered Alonzo's case 16 years later. This not only piqued public interest, but it also got the FBI's attention, and they began receiving tips on this case as well as other cases that were featured in this series. On the 11th of June 2020, attorney Stephen McAllister and FBI special agent in charge Timothy Langan announced that they were reinvestigating whether Alonzo was the victim of a racially motivated crime. And they have actually offered a reward of $100,000 for information leading to the prosecution of the individual or individuals involved that may be responsible for Alonzo's death. They also stated that Alonzo's death was certainly suspicious, and someone, or likely multiple people, know what happened to Alonzo that night at the party in April 2004. Alonzo's body has since been exhumed. A lot of people were young at this party. Obviously it's been 16 years. They have since grown up. They possibly didn't know what they saw was of relevance. Maybe now they can come forward. Maybe they have some useful information. I'm actually really glad they are re-looking into Alonzo's case, and I really do hope they find out what happened to him. Like I said, I believe myself it was suspicious. So when I looked into this and found that actually they were reinvestigating it, I thought that hopefully this could bring some closure to the family. I really think it's good that these kind of shows can be made to bring light to cases that have since gone cold and can possibly bring in some new information into them. Who knows, maybe even get the case solved after all these years. Okay guys, that's all I have on the case of Alonzo Brooks. Like I said, his body has been exhumed, so if I do find any more information on it, I will do another video. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye!